In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can send information from ClickUp into pretty much any other tool using Integromat. And today we're going to cover, what is Integromat, which you might be wondering at the onset here. And I'm going to give you the step-by-step and click-by-click of actually setting up a scenario where we send finished videos from ClickUp into a spreadsheet that we have in Google Sheets using Integromat. And it's not nearly as confusing as it sounds, but if you find yourself getting confused today, just know that there are timestamps in the description below and you can kind of jump along, and you can always save this video if you find yourself getting a little bit stuck. First of all, why the heck are we even doing this process? We have our data here, and each of these tasks inside ClickUp represents a video that this imaginary cork manufacturer is publishing. Now, just with the 4 tasks we have here, this doesn't look too overwhelming, but you can imagine as you're starting to produce more and more and more published videos, and I don't know why I'm making them numbers, but just bear with me. As you have more videos here, this can become very cluttered. Even if you collapse it, having hundreds of completed tasks in a list can just feel a little bit, messy. So what we can do instead, rather than having all of our information live in ClickUp and die in ClickUp and archiving things as they become, done, let's instead use Integromat to send any published videos into a centralized spreadsheet that looks something like this, that basically has a column for the video name, the date completed, which is probably going to be the date it was published, the description of the video, and the ClickUp task that was originally created with. This spreadsheet, to me at least, feels a lot easier to use and manage than ClickUp, believe it or not, for things that are in the past. Because basically, once a video is done, we go from needing to collaborate on it, which is really where ClickUp's strengths shine, to instead, in the future here, as everything is published, our focus now is just to manage, to keep the data intact, to keep things simple, even as we have hundreds or thousands of videos coming out. And that's where ClickUp, while it can do the job, it might not be the best one. So instead, we're going to rely on Google Sheets for that piece of the information management. Now, of course, we know that ClickUp and Google Sheets don't exactly integrate in the way we would need to in order to have this situation set up without having to incorporate any other tools. We can embed Google Sheets into ClickUp, that's pretty cool, but we can't say, hey, ClickUp, automatically send this task into Sheets. It's just not possible natively. So when there is not a native integration option, meaning there's not a built-in way to just connect the two with a click of a button, we need to turn to third-party tools. And the tool of choice I'm going to be talking about for the most of this video today is going to be Integromat. And what Integromat does is it connects 2 pieces of cloud technology together by sending information from one tool into the other tool. It's basically acting as a middleman or a translator for the technologies that you're working on. This can be really valuable because it prevents you having to manually retype information from one tool into the next, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen companies where they'll have this database and they'll say, hey, I want to start a Sheets database. So they just go in here, they click on this, they copy the task name, and they make their database that way. While yes, it's possible, this is not the best use of your time or any human on your team's time. So instead, we introduce a tool like Integromat that will send this information back and forth directly and automatically by acting as our translator. So just from this clip on Integromat's website, you can kind of get a sense of how this tool works. It looks at information on one tool, sends it to another tool, and does some stuff with it, sends the information along the way on a journey that you define. It pulls a lot of information out and can send a lot of information in using dynamic fields that kind of make ClickUp's automations look quite simple in comparison. Integromat can integrate with a variety of different tools, and you can see some of those here on their website, and if you search the apps and integrations area on their website, you're going to see many more. But the reason I'm highlighting it today about ClickUp, even though tools like Zapier might be a little bit more popular, is because Integromat has one of the best integrations with ClickUp that I have been able to find. One of the reasons for this, I suspect, is because rumor has it Integromat's own team actually uses ClickUp, meaning the people who created this translator software use ClickUp on a day-to-day basis. So it's in their best interest, even disproportionately in their interest, to create really good connections with ClickUp versus other tools like Zapier might not have that same incentive. Because of Integromat's really good connections, we're able to pull information out of ClickUp and send information to ClickUp that other tools just can't touch. Things like list color or custom fields. If you're using Zapier, you will not be able to access this information, meaning you can't get the information out of ClickUp and you can't put the information into ClickUp or edit it in any way. That gives Integromat a real edge and makes it worth the slightly steeper learning curve versus alternative options. Ooh, and I should say, if you are at all worried about pricing, Integromat, just like its competitors, has a really generous free plan. So you can actually use the link in the description below if you want to use my affiliate link and support this channel while you're actually trying out Integromat. Create your free account and try to follow along with our tutorial today. What we're going to be building, just to reiterate, is we're going to set up a connection between ClickUp and Google Sheets to send our published videos into this simple but effective spreadsheet. So let's just start off with that. So just to start at the end, before we go to the beginning, this is the end result we are going for today. We are going to watch ClickUp tasks, meaning we're going to keep an eye on what's happening in ClickUp. When a certain thing happens, which we're going to be defining in this module, we will get some more information about that task, which again, we're going to make, this will all make more sense as we go. And then finally, we're going to add a row in our Google Sheet here to correspond with the changes we saw in ClickUp. That's kind of what we're building today. So once you create your free Integromat account using our affiliate link in the description below, you can go ahead and create a new scenario to follow along with us. That's going to be going under this little scenario icon over here, and then clicking on Create a New Scenario. Now, Integromat, like many tools, have templates. This Create a New Scenario is going to start you out with kind of a blank slate, and that's what we're going to want to do today. So click on Create a New Scenario, and it's going to ask you what tools are you going to be using in this. You don't have to fill these out here, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Skip. Once I click Skip, I end up seeing this big old empty canvas, and immediately it prompts me for what tool I want to start with, which is why it wasn't really necessary to select it earlier. Because we're trying to set up a situation where we're sending information from ClickUp to Google Sheets, we're going to start off by selecting ClickUp from the dropdown. Once I select ClickUp, we're going to see a whole lot of options. Remember that translation metaphor I was talking about earlier? Yeah, here are all of the words in this integration tools vocabulary. A lot of different things you can do to and from ClickUp. But for our purposes today, all we need to focus on is watching tasks. Now, this is trippy. It confused me when I first came in here. There are two watch tasks things in Integromat. And before we go into the difference between them, I want to just first explain the watch part. Watching just basically means, what do we want Integromat to do? Where are we looking for our trigger? And in this case, watching tasks is saying we want Integromat to look for when to start based on changes to our tasks. That's all the watch piece is doing. Now, as for the differences between these two different modules they have here, let me actually just show you. The very first watch tasks actually already created here. If you go ahead and try to add it into your account, it's going to prompt you to select just some general information about your ClickUp. So we're going to not worry about these webhooks yet. We're going to talk about that soon. But basically, it just asks you, hey, for the task you have me looking at, what types of events do you care about? Do I care when a task is created, a task updated, task deleted, or so on? When do you want this to trigger? You can choose any of them from the dropdown. I find this to be a quite simple way to start off. And so we're going to be using the very first module, the first ClickUp option, which is again, this one here, in order to do our automation today. But I do want to explain the second automation module as well, in case you are also, like I was, a little confused by it. If we go in here to set up an automation, we see a slightly more complex tutorial here. We again get to choose what we want to watch, but it asks us quite a few more questions as to what we want to watch. We then get to narrow things down way more narrowly, not just talking about a change, but actually looking at certain tasks based on certain search criteria that, to me at least, as someone who's still early on in her Integromat journey, this to me suggests we're looking for creation or things changing that match a specific search. Whereas this, we are looking for something that's just anything that is this type of change. So we're grouping by the type of change versus the actual content of the task. I'm going to be updating you guys. You're going to be following me along on my own Integromat learning journey. I know we have Integromat experts among us, so feel free to drop some comments and drop some knowledge in the comments, rather. But for the purposes of our tutorial today, I just wanted to show you those two different watch tasks ones, explain them, and point out that we're going to be doing the first option today. So once we've selected the correct module we want to start with, we can go ahead and add the webhook we're going to do, which is basically saying, what are we looking for in order to have this kick off? In this case, I'm going to just give it a name of specifically what I'm working on today. Then I'm going to choose which ClickUp connection I want to use, which odds are you only have one. If you've never connected ClickUp in the past, you might need to click add and follow their prompts to actually get yourself logged in. It's going to look something like this, where it's kind of like a login screen you have to go to. If it trips you up in any way, I will point out, and I had a little bit of issue with this myself when I was adding and re-adding. Integromat does have a Connections tab. That would be one place to look, and you can also check the Integrations tab under ClickUp Settings in case you're looking to just check in on the status of anything. So just in case you had any issues getting this all set up, that would be where you look. Once you have your account connected, though, we just need to tell it what workspace are we looking in. So in this case, I'm going to choose my enterprise one, and I can choose to filter it down even further by saying, hey, only watch this space, this task, or this list. In this case, what I have inside of my ClickUp is an actual list for my pretend this is content. So that's what I'm going to select in the Integromat scenario. I'm going to filter by a list. This list is inside the ClickUp 101 space. It's a folderless list. And the list itself is called Pretend This Is Content. That's really not that hard, right? We're just telling it where exactly in ClickUp we're looking. The next step we need to do is decide what event type we want to kick this off. So again, like we talked about before, updated, deleted, whatever. In this case, I think what I'm going to go with, a status update here, just because when it moves to the complete status, that's really what I care about. I could also maybe do deleted, so that way we can have deletion as part of our process, but I don't think I would get in the habit of that. So I'm going to go with a status change as kind of my trigger to kick off this whole automation. So we've basically set up this very first piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to run it just to see what happens. What we're going to do here is run this module, which basically says, hey, Integromat, go ahead and watch those tasks and see if anything happens. Running this module only, oh no, there's errors. And this is probably a pretty important piece to learn about Integromat. There are going to be errors that you need to test. It looks like my initial WebHook was not selected, so we just need to select it again, and there we go. Let's try it again and try to run it once. And we're just going to run this one little piece to see. Okay, looks like things are going. Now, if I go back here and I actually change the status of some of these tasks, let's just go ahead and move this to in progress, we should see Integromat notice that change. Now, it might take a minute or two, but it should come through. Oh, and there we go. As I flip back to the other tab, we see that there is a result here, a task ID of what is this? Let's see. Is that the same one? RX something, something, something. What is the task ID here? Task ID. I'm just going to paste it down here so I can see it because I didn't have it visible as a column. Indeed, that is the one. Now you might be thinking, Layla, why is it only giving me the task ID? It's the quirk of this particular piece. We need to actually add another step if we want more than just that one little piece of information. And I think we do, right? So what we need to do next is tell Integromat, okay, now that we know the task ID, I want you to look up that task ID and get me a lot more information about it. So when you're trying to get more information based on some piece of information that you already have in Integromat, you're going to be looking for a get action, right? A get thing that you do. So here I'm going to say get a task. And what this is going to do is it says right here, you can read, get the details of a specific task. So again, I need to orient myself to set up this piece by clicking on it. Again, making sure my connection is the same, that would make sense. And my very first option is to map or select. Mapping means I'm going to pick a field that already exists elsewhere in my automation. Whereas selecting is going to mean I'm going to just find a task by, again, going through the whole hierarchy. In this case, I'm going to choose the map option, which basically means the output of the task before is the input of this task, okay? Or this step, rather. So I'm going to go ahead and click into this, and I'm going to see the results of the earlier step. And we can see task ID is right here. So that is going to be my input. So the output of the one is the input of the next. I'm going to click OK. Now, again, let's just go ahead and test just this one piece and see what happens if I manually put in the task ID. And I think I pasted it earlier, so I'm just going to paste it in again and get rid of that sign and click OK. See what happens if I run just that one. Aha! Okay, so it pulled in all of the other information. When I ran this manually, it did ask me to type it manually. That's just part of the manual test, but we can see that it did successfully pull all the information we wanted about that particular task. And you can see, I mean, there is a lot of information is pulling about this particular task. Okay, so now we have it watching tasks, we have it getting more information about that task. The final step is just to tell it where to put this information because we looked things up, We gathered all the information we could possibly need. Let's get this stuff into a spreadsheet. Now, triggers, again, start off scenarios. They typically are, kicking things off, just like in ClickUp automations. Because we know we're trying to take an action, we probably want to choose an action, which would be at the bottom here. And there's a lot of other options as well. But today we're going to focus on add a row. Very simple. I'm going to put this here. You can see how it auto connects kind of if I drag it in there. You can also just manually drag that between. Integromat has a very nice interface. There we go. So now we need to tell it, okay, we have all this information. Where exactly do we want it in our spreadsheet? I'm going to click on the spreadsheet module and it's going to open up another loading page. Inside here, we're going to need to connect to our Google account. That is going to be pretty much the same process as connecting to Google. Just sign in when you click add. It walks you right through it. Then we need to choose how we want to pick the spreadsheet. Now, because we didn't already identify the spreadsheet earlier, it's not like we found the spreadsheet earlier in this process. We need to instead select our spreadsheet. So we're going to click here. Okay, I found it. There we go. Now we need to choose which sheet, which is these little tab guys, which sheet in our spreadsheet do we want? In this case, I'm just going to choose the only one that we have. And it's going to ask me if my data has headers. If I go back here, I can clearly see that there are headers here. So yes, I do indeed have headers. And now it's going to start asking me about the values. This is going to get pretty simple here. Values equals task ID. That is the header that we have here. It's just kind of connecting those two together and it's pulling that information in. But the piece that can sometimes trip people up is then putting the information we got earlier into the spreadsheet. We need to tell Integromat what information equals what. Where do we want this information to go? So for the very first thing, I want my task ID. And that's pretty easy. Task ID, right up at the top. The next one, I want my video name. Where's my video name in ClickUp? This is where you need to start knowing your own structure. In this case, I know that my task name, right here, is always my video name. So there we go. The next piece is date complete. If I start typing in date complete, nothing shows up there. But I do know of a different date that I use in my own ClickUp, which is the due date or the date close. I can choose either of those to have those pull in as the date complete. It depends on what I'm using those fields for. In this case, I'm going to say the date that the task is closed is the date that it's published because maybe that's the process I follow, so I'm going to map that in. Next, I can choose the description of the video, which could probably be the text content, meaning the substance of the task. I can also choose the description. I believe those almost pull in the same data if I remember correctly, but we can always change it if it's wrong. And the final piece is the ClickUp task. Now, what I mean here in my spreadsheet is I want to have a URL into ClickUp in case I want to see the original task at some point down the line. Perhaps when I archive it, I still want to be able to see it. So what I'm going to do here is rather than typing in the exact words I have, I'm going to type in URL because I know that's where I can get the unique URL for this particular ClickUp task. So I'm going to click URL. Okay. I don't need these extra fields because they're just empty columns, so I'm going to skip those and then I'm going to click OK. All right, so now we have Integromat watching ClickUp. We have ClickUp getting more information for us, and we have Google Sheets getting ready to add a different row for each video that we have. So we're just going to go ahead and let's try this. I'm going to click Run Once, which is basically like the Go button on this automation. And we know right here, based on this little timing scheduler icon, that whenever this is running or turned on, if this happens, if a task status is changed in this area while this is running, it will immediately trigger this automation. So let's just test it out. I'm going to click Run Once. I'm going to go into my ClickUp account and I'm going to change the status of one of these videos. Now, it might take a minute or two, but when I pop back into Integromat, we should see instantaneously pretty much the video moves through. So this is the one that I just created. Hard to tell with the task ID, but when I go to the next step, here you go. You can see the task name right there. And then finally, we see it being created on the spreadsheet. Now we can go to the spreadsheet and there it is as well. The reason these are showing up as blank is because, first of all, we don't have a task description. I didn't write one, sorry. And the date completed, the task is not complete. And this presents a unique challenge here because this automation should be showing us videos that are published, but it triggered when we moved to an in progress status. And that makes sense because we only told Integromat, hey, tell us when a task changes status. But we really want it to tell us when a task changes to a particular status. So what we need to do here, just like we would do in ClickUp, is narrow down our trigger just a little bit by adding a filter. But before I do that, I just want to say if you're enjoying this video so far, you could help me out a whole lot by giving this video a thumbs up, And thank you for doing that. Let's go on to the tutorial. So what I need to do now is to actually build a filter. So I'm going to go in here, click set up a filter, and I'm going to say label. This is kind of explanation for ourselves. And I can clarify what I want that label to do. So I'm looking for the status field. And you can see the status value for that one was in progress. I'm just going to simply type in. Typing is not the fanciest way, but it will definitely get the job done here. We're going to say is equal to complete. And actually, we'll just make it lowercase. Click OK. So now you can see those words pop up there. Now, in theory, this should only trigger if a status change is complete because we have this filter set up at this piece. The reason we cannot have the filter set up at this early piece is because we don't yet have the status of the task. The only result we have here is the task ID, which is hard for us to filter by. But here, we get a whole lot more info, which gives us something that we can then filter on. So what this handler should do is kind of what we just see here as I just mocked it up prior to recording here. So we have the initial result gets pulled. It goes through the second step, and the only way it passes this filter is if the status equals complete. So if I go ahead and run this, let's just go ahead and run this once, and I move, say, this task, Cork 101, back to in progress, meaning it's moving statuses, but it's not moving to the complete status, we should see this go off. See? This go off. Looks like it did, but we should see it fail this test, which it did, meaning it did not create a row on our spreadsheet because it did not satisfy that requirement. If I turn this on again, then I go back into ClickUp and I change one of these from in progress to complete. We should now see a row being created. Let's go back into Integromat, watch that happen. Aha, there we go. So we had the task change occur, which triggered the automation here, or at least, got caught in the automation's net. We did the get a task to get more information on that task, and that information included, see, the status right here of complete, which means it passed our status filter, which means it made its way to our spreadsheet. And there we go. Now we have a spreadsheet we have a row on our spreadsheet for that new file. Now, the final step we need to do if we want to just wipe our hands of this and consider this done is make sure that we have this turned on so it's always running without us just having to click the button every few minutes. So what we can do is just turn on scheduling, meaning basically like, hey, have this happen. By default, because this can be done immediately, meaning it's always watching all the time and will trigger right away, because that's default. If I just turn this on like it just did there, it's going to make it an immediate action, meaning as soon as this happens, it will trigger. The reason we might not want to do that is just because it uses up a lot of our quota inside Integromat. And honestly, for things like this, I don't think I need it to be instantaneous. So I'm actually going to slow this down to be once a day at, let's do like a crazy time, like 4 in the morning. If I can go that way, 4 in the morning, and click OK. So now every day at 4 a.m., this automation is going to run. It's going to look for any tasks that have been completed in the past day and add them onto our spreadsheet. That way, I'm using up a little bit less of my quota inside Integromat, and I just don't have to worry about it. If there's an error for some reason, I will see it when I wake up in the morning because Integromat will email me, and I can consider this kind of case closed as soon as I click schedule. So in conclusion, this is how we can use Integromat to pull information out of ClickUp to get even more information based on that original information and then create a row in a Google Sheet. Now, as you might have seen as I was going through this tutorial, there's a lot more Integromat can do. So if you'd like to see more tutorials about Integromat, you would really help me out if you would leave a comment below and let me know what you'd like to see. I'd love to cover Integromat in detail because I really think not only is it something I'm still working on mastering myself, but I think it's something that can be so useful to many of the small businesses that I know watch this channel. So if you have a specific app or specific use case that you're trying to build out in Integromat, or maybe you just want to brag about your own Integromat wins, please do use the comments below. Otherwise, that wraps up this tutorial. You can find a whole lot more about automations inside and outside of ClickUp by watching this tutorial here, this whole playlist of tutorials here, because we are covering it throughout this month and we are releasing a lot of content all about how you can automate and streamline your workflow using ClickUp automations, but also amazing tools like Integromat. And don't forget, if you haven't played with Integromat yet, link in the description below. All right, I'll see you guys next time and enjoy the process.